Rain clouds gathered over the small, forgotten village as two children ran down the muddy path, their bare feet splashing through puddles. The boy, no older than 10, clutched a piece of bread in his trembling hand, the only food they had found in 2 days. His little sister stumbled behind him, gasping for air, her frail body struggling to keep up. Behind them, a stray dog barked and growled, chasing the scent of the bread. The children's hearts pounded with fear as they darted through the narrow lanes, desperate to escape. "Don't let go of my hand," the boy shouted, pulling his sister forward. She nodded, tears streaming down her dirty cheeks. They finally spotted an old barn at the edge of the village and rushed inside, slamming the creaky door behind them. The barking stopped, but the echo of fear lingered in their hearts. The boy looked at his sister, panting, his small chest rising and falling rapidly. She pointed to the bread and whispered, "Are we going to eat now?" He looked at it, soggy, dirty, but still bread, and nodded slowly. The barn was cold and smelled of damp hay. Rain dripped through holes in the roof, tapping softly on the wooden floor. The boy tore a small piece of bread and handed it to his sister. Her little hands trembled as she reached for it but hesitated. "You eat," she said quietly. "You're bigger, you need it more." He smiled weakly, brushing her hair away from her face. "Big brothers always let their little sisters eat first," he whispered. His stomach growled, but he ignored it. She took the piece and nibbled at it slowly, her eyes never leaving his face. The rain outside grew heavier, the sound almost like a lullaby. The boy wrapped his arm around her shoulders, trying to keep her warm. "Do you remember how Mama used to sing when it rained?" he asked softly. The girl nodded and closed her eyes, tears mixing with the rainwater on her face. He began to hum, the same tune their mother once sang, a melody of comfort and loss. Soon, her breathing slowed as she drifted into sleep. The boy looked at the remaining piece of bread, placed it beside her, and whispered, "Sleep, little one. Tomorrow will be better." But deep down, he wasn't sure there would be a tomorrow. The morning light crept through the cracks in the barn, painting soft streaks across the children's faces. The boy woke first, his stomach twisting painfully from hunger. The small piece of bread that remained was gone. His sister had eaten it during the night, but he didn't mind. Seeing her still breathing, her tiny chest rising and falling, gave him a kind of strength that food never could. He brushed the straw from her hair and whispered, "It's time to go." She opened her eyes weakly and smiled. They had nowhere to go, but staying meant starving. As they stepped out, the cold wind bit at their skin. The village was slowly waking up. Smoke rose from chimneys, people began shouting orders, carts rattled down the muddy road. But to these two children, the world was silent and cruel. They passed by a bakery, and the smell of fresh bread wrapped around them like a spell. The girl's stomach growled. The boy glanced inside and saw warm loaves piled high, golden and soft. He swallowed hard, his eyes glistening. The baker, a large man with rough hands, saw them standing there. "Go away," he barked, throwing a rag in their direction. "No begging here." The girl flinched, hiding behind her brother. The boy stood his ground for a second but then lowered his head and pulled her away. "Someday," he muttered quietly, "we'll have our own bread, a whole loaf just for us." She smiled faintly, holding onto that fragile promise. By evening, the sky darkened again. The children wandered to the outskirts of the village where an old woman lived alone. They had heard rumors that she was kind once, before her son died and she shut her heart to the world. The boy knocked timidly on her wooden door. When she opened it, her eyes were cold, her face wrinkled with sorrow. "What do you want?" she asked harshly. "Just a piece of bread, please," the boy said softly, his voice shaking. The old woman stared at them for a long moment. Then, without a word, she turned and shut the door. The sound echoed like thunder in their small hearts. The girl began to cry quietly. The boy took her hand again, whispering, "Don't cry. We'll find something." But as they walked away into the night, even he began to lose hope, and the stars above seemed too far to hear their prayers. The night grew colder, and the moonlight guided the children through the empty fields. The boy carried his sister in his arms now. Her feet were blistered, her body weak from hunger. He whispered stories to keep her awake, tales of a warm house, soft beds, and a table full of food. His own voice trembled, but he forced a smile every time she looked up at him. When they reached the edge of the forest, he saw something glimmer near an old wooden fence, a crust of bread, half-eaten, probably dropped by a traveler. He knelt quickly, breaking it into 2 uneven parts and handing the larger one to her. "Eat," he said. "You need it more." She shook her head and pushed it back. "You're older. You eat." They argued softly, both refusing to take the first bite. But before either could decide, a low growl echoed through the silence. From the shadows, a dog appeared, thin, dirty, and wild-eyed. It snarled, teeth bared, hungry just like them. The boy froze, clutching the bread tightly. His sister whimpered and hid behind him. The dog crept closer, its ribs showing through its matted fur. It wanted the bread. For a brief moment, their eyes met, the boy's filled with fear, the dog's filled with desperation. Slowly, trembling, the boy knelt down and placed the bread on the ground between them. "Take it," he whispered. "We'll find another." The dog snatched the bread and ran off into the darkness. The girl burst into tears. "That was our only food," she cried. The boy hugged her tightly. "It's okay," he said softly, though his stomach twisted with pain. Maybe he needed it more than we did. Hours later, as dawn began to rise, the sound of footsteps approached. It was the old woman from the village, the same one who had shut her door on them. She carried a lantern and a small basket. Her eyes softened when she saw the children curled up by the fence, pale and trembling. She knelt beside them and covered them with her shawl. "Forgive me," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. She took them home, fed them warm soup, and laid them by the fire. The boy opened his eyes, too weak to speak, but managed a faint smile. The dog appeared at the door again, tail wagging. The old woman looked at all three, and for the first time in years, her lonely house was filled with the sound of quiet, grateful breathing and the warmth of human kindness reborn.